I hope you can hear us, and I hope you have got the right equipment so that there is no noise disruption. Thank you for joining. We will soon start with a session on navigating toward a competitive future in food systems. It will go on till about 11:45, and then there will be a break where you can either visit other stages or do the networking and lots of opportunities. I've got another microphone. Is there one missing? I think it's all of us, right? So during this session, we will explore the dynamic future of food through integrated approach of innovation, sustainability, and adaptability, and navigate the complexities of digital and environmental transitions while maintaining competitiveness, ensuring fairness in our food systems. So where do the trade-offs lie? Who bears the costs? Can Europe maintain global competitiveness during those transformative times? And to discuss that with me, I've got four distinguished speakers. Right next to me is PhD assistant professor at the Center for Environmental and Climate Science of Lund University, Denis Kocha. Welcome and thank you for joining.
Thank you.
Next to him is a researcher at ANIA, Maurizio Notarfonso. Thank you for joining us.
Hello, everybody.
And then we've got Regenerative Agriculture Training Program Coordinator at EIT Food, Massimiliano Miaton. Welcome. Thank you for joining this panel.
Thank you. Hi, everyone.
And we will begin by Chief of Staff to Honorary Enrico Letta for an introduction in which we will present a famous report on competitiveness, right, which will essentially set the stage for the conversation. So Chief of Staff to Enrico Letta is Tullio Ombrosone. Welcome, and we give you the floor. We are all ears.
Thank you. Thank you, Civile, and good morning, everyone. I'm glad to be here to share some of the main insights of Enrico Letta's report on the future of the single market, a report that was tasked by the European Council and the European Commission in September 2023. And the idea of the European institutions was to open up a reflection on the future of the single market and the future of European competitiveness. And that's also why President von der Leyen asked Mario Draghi to deliver a report on European competitiveness that was presented in September. And these two works stem from a simple analysis of the scenario, the context in which we are living today. A context that is dramatically changed compared to the establishment of the single market 30 years ago. 30 years ago, the European Union's economy was at the center of the world economy. Europe was on par with the United States, leading in terms of competitiveness, in terms of innovation, but this is no longer the case today. We have witnessed also a shift in the global economic power from the West towards East. China and India were only 5% of the world economy in the 1990s, while today they represent more than 20%. And aside from these economic considerations, the international world order is today being put under pressure by the reemergence of trade conflicts, of power politics and of war. So this is the starting point for the analysis of the report on the future of the single market. Everything has changed, and this is true also for food systems. We see global competition on the rise with BRICS countries. We have seen the vulnerability of our supply chains with the pandemic and now with the war. And we have also seen in the last year an important regulatory pressure, because we see that the European Commission has worked a lot in the last legislature to react to these challenges, and this is posing significant burden and cost also on businesses, on our producers, on the food system in general. This means, and this leads me to say that yes, the European Commission, the European member states have reacted to this crisis, to this change of the scenario we have witnessed. But this is exactly the problem. We have to shift from a reactive mode, from a reaction to crisis, to an active policy making, to a vision for the European economy. And that exactly was the exercise that we did for the elaboration of the report. On many of these strategic objectives that we have, the commitment to the green and digital transition, security and defense, enlargement, on many of these dossiers, it is no longer a question of whether Europe will pursue them or not. It is rather a question of how it will do so. So I will focus now on three main elements of the report, I will try to highlight these three dimensions that are interrelated and that are at the end of the day the critical enablers for European competitiveness and are very relevant also for your discussions today. And the first is the issue of financing our strategic objectives. And I will take the example of the Green Deal here that is quite relevant. The Green Deal is there, the policy agenda is clear. We know that this transformative process will have a significant cost for our businesses, for our societies, for our citizens. The Commission estimates 620 billion annually for the Green Deal and Repower EU plans, but we have not set in place clear funding mechanisms to address these plans. And understandably, there is concern in Europe. We are starting to see concern and resistance against these processes because, as I said, there is a transformative process in change. We know that it has a significant cost, but we don't know who and how will pay for this transition. So the issue of financing is crucial here. And what we did in the report is try to develop a mix of public and private investment tools that can try to respond to this issue. And what we try to highlight is the fact that starting from the private pillar is very important for two main reasons. One is an economic reason, and it is the fact that our financial markets in the European Union are tremendously fragmented. We have 27 different financial markets that lead to an underperformance at the end of the day. There is one specific figure that is staggering and that depicts this scenario. And it's the fact that each year 300 billion euros of our savings, the savings of the European citizens, go to fuel the American financial markets because our financial markets aren't able to absorb these resources. So this is an incredible untapped potential we have, and it's at the same time an advantage that we are giving, in this case, to a partner of ours, the Americans, but in many other sectors, this advantage is given to our competitors. So this, starting from the financial markets, the integration of the financial markets is crucial from an economic point of view, but also from a political point of view, because Next Generation EU, the big public investment tool that we have developed after the pandemic, will end in 2027. And its future is uncertain. What we realize traveling across Europe, engaging with stakeholders, with institutions, is that there is a lot of skepticism, especially in Northern Europe, on the future of this instrument. So politically, starting from the private pillar, from the private leg of investments, is crucial to then unlock the conditions to open up the discussion also on the public leg of investments. And this leads me to the second element I want to mention today that has to do with scale, the scale of the European economy, the scale of our companies. As I was saying, 30 years ago, Europe and its companies were at the center of the world economy, were leading in terms of innovation. And this is no longer the case today because over-fragmentation in every sector, I mentioned finance, but this is in every sector, is hampering the ability of our companies to grow fast, to compete at the global level. And this does not necessarily mean that we need consolidation, we need European champions everywhere in each sector, because the European Union's economy has always been a mix of big and small, big countries, small countries, big companies, small companies. And we need to preserve this mix. But the problem is that the big of today in Europe and in the world is not the big of 30 years ago. The big European company today is small in comparison with the giants of the American economy, of the Chinese economy, the Indian economy. So the issue here is that we need a new paradigm in which we need to combine economies of scale, where this creates more productivity, more efficiency, fosters competitiveness, and we need also localization and proximity, where this creates more benefits for the consumer. So it's a new paradigm, and inaction and inertia on this front is really dangerous. It means irrelevance, it means marginalization, it means becoming a colony of, be it the US or Indians or the Chinese. We only have to choose to which superpower we have to become a colony. And the third and final element I wanted to mention today that is particularly relevant, I believe, for our discussion today and in the next days is innovation, because at the end of the day, the real deal for European competitiveness is innovation. The innovative capabilities of our companies is what allows them to be at the forefront of economic transformative change and compete at the global level. And this is particularly true for food systems, because the need to adapt to the new scenario in which we are living is fundamental, and we need to develop new business models that are able to keep together different goals: sustainability, resilience, consumer welfare, and this is very complicated. We need innovation on this front. And in the report, what we stress is that the important element and the key probably to unlock innovation in Europe is research and development. By pooling together our resources, our capabilities, our infrastructures, in research and development, we will be able to create the conditions for our companies to innovate. And here is where the idea of the fifth freedom emerges in the report. The single market was built 30 years ago around four fundamental freedoms: the free movement of goods, of services, of people and capital. But this is it seems to us, 21st century approach. There is something intangible that is missing from this scheme, from this structure. And this is ideas, this is knowledge, this is education, this is research. So the fifth freedom is exactly this. It's adding a fifth dimension, free flow of knowledge, of creativity, of ideas into the scheme of the single market, in order to produce the conditions enabling the single market to really develop innovation. Because at the end of the day, by fostering cross-border collaboration, knowledge sharing, we will be able to drive frontier research, we will be able to develop new technologies, new business models, and to adapt to this new scenario. And what I wanted to mention in conclusion is that when we talk about European competitiveness, this is not something abstract. This is not something that should fascinate only technocrats or economists or politicians. It has to do, European competitiveness has to do with the life, with the ordinary life of every one of us. It means jobs, it means security, it means salaries, opportunities, and it means also values, because at the end of the day, the ability the European Union has to uphold its values, its fundamental values in the global scenario, is its economic strength. It's the leverage we have at the global level. This is fundamental. And I conclude just with one last element that brings me back to the beginning of the journey we had for the report on the future of the single market. That is the legacy of Jacques Delors, the founding father of the single market. He always strongly believed that economic integration cannot work without cohesion, without convergence. So all the solutions we develop here, as I was saying, need to strike a balance between the big and the small, between the centers and the peripheries of our union, between the mobile companies and population and the non-mobile. All these solutions must be inclusive. So to wrap up, I believe that this new formula we have to work for European competitiveness has to consider a way to finance our strategic objectives. It has to develop new ideas for revamping the scale of our economy, for fostering innovation, but they have absolutely to be inclusive solutions where cohesion is at the core. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We give you a hand now. And thank you for providing us with a useful glance at the food systems angle. Despite the report not being sector specific, there are just two tiny things that I want to double check. When you talk about the fifth freedom, this is a reference to the four freedoms: freedom of speech and expression, freedom of worship, right? Freedom from want, and freedom from fear. So this is just me double checking that. I just wanted to ask you something like this. If I understand correctly, the issue in Europe is not about the lack of ideas, lack of connectivity among researchers, but it's, the tempo, the scale that we are lacking. If we take the startups, for example, presenting the product into the market is where we get stuck, is as far as I get it. And you talked about the US as, untapped potential because now we're giving advantage to the US. What is it like? How do we untap this potential then? Do you have any, specific recipes?
I don't have the magic formula, but as I said, I believe that at the end of the day, it's about combining this element. As you said, for a startup to grow in whatever sector, it needs, first of all, funding, it needs scale, and it needs the enabling factors for innovation. So it's about combining these elements, and the key word here is integration. It's moving forward in all the sectors we have. Fragmentation, when we have 27 different markets for every sector, this is really hampering the ability of our companies to grow. So it's integration is the key, because scalability, funding, innovation comes when we have a stronger force altogether. And this is not really, it's not only rhetoric. This is something really pragmatic that we need to work on. There is still a lot of resistance. This is what we realize traveling across Europe. There is still a lot of resistance.
Resistance to what?
Resistance to integration. to this process
Would you
of
give a
integration.
specific example, and
I
then
could
we'll
give a
move to
specific, maybe not particularly relevant for food systems, but in the banking sector, for example, it is clear that integration is the key. It is clear that we are absolutely looking backwards because we have 27 fragmented markets, 27 consob, to make an example. It's the authority
Okay.
here in Italy, and still, despite the fact that I gave you that figure, the fact that we are sending away our savings, our resources to other financial markets, despite this clear evidence, at the end of the day, national governments want to keep a hold, a kind of strength, a power over their financial system. So this is just one example, but I
Okay.
could talk about
Okay.
energy, telecommunication.
Okay, yes, thank you so much. We'll get some more approaches. Dennis, how does the fifth freedom sound to you? Cross-border collaboration and knowledge sharing and integration. Isn't that done already? Do you have any good examples from academia that would work in terms of, improving competitiveness of Europe?
Yep. Thanks very much for the presentation. And when I hear the word integration, that comes with a proper understanding of this complex and dynamic system. Without that, we cannot talk about this integration. We're talking about cross-sectoral collaboration. We're talking about understanding the role of each of these key actors in the system in this transformation. We're talking about food systems transformation here. So to me, even if you're very good in investing in the innovation, mostly it happens on the product level, on the process level, partially in the nice new innovative business model level, but I think it needs to go beyond that. With a proper understanding of this complexity, then we need to talk about innovation in the way the institutions work. We need to talk about the innovation, the way we work and make the policies. So without that, we are not completing the big picture. And then what happens is we have really good in this, like startups coming with the innovative idea.
Yeah.
They grow to a certain level, but then the US comes and then buys the company, and then all the investment and everything goes to another part of the world, and then we talk about European competitiveness. So I think this is also what the report highlights, like how we cannot hold the innovative ideas, the money in Europe, it goes somewhere else just because of this.
So
And
how do
seen
we
this.
stop that money coming out of Europe to the US?
I think we have a very good example of this here today. Like, if I remember right, Richard said that like we have like 600,000 individuals or organizations network in here. Like how we can talk and decide about like how we will act together. So yeah, it's not an easy task, but it requires this systemic understanding of like where in this complex systems the leverage points are, and then aligned workforce, a nice roadmap around this to act from a single point.
If I asked you to single out one or two projects that you are working on that would, be heading towards solving the competitiveness issue in Europe, what would that be?
I work very much with alternative proteins. I'm the vice president of EIT Food Protein Diversification think tank. So this is a good example of like how we brought this community together and look into this, like producing alternative ways of alternatives to animal-based, industrial level animal-based proteins. So there, for instance, of course, the Commission is also interested in that because there's so much ongoing with biotechnology at the moment, like the US, China, and some other parts of the world, like how Europe is acting on that and what is the cost of inaction. If we don't act now, how would that affect the competitiveness of Europe in the future? So at that level, we have two Horizon Europe finance projects. One is particularly looking at the cultivated meat and seafood, a feast project, and another one looking into other types of novel food production from different alternative protein sources, Epic Shift. So I see the similar faces here, like we've been working together on that. It's competitiveness is not the only thing. We're talking about the food security. We're talking about the resilience. We're talking about sustainability here in Europe. So to address all of these issues, what is the environmental, socio-economic, techno-economic benefits of producing alternative sources of proteins in Europe? Because we're at the moment dependent on the protein that we import from different parts of Europe. We've seen, you already mentioned the war, the COVID, how the disruptions in the supply chain affected the whole system, the food system. So we need to have a good understanding of this complex system and try to come up with the leverage points in the systems. And then that comes again, the innovation ecosystems. It's not only enough to have the innovation in the product process or business models or the institutions, the way they work. We need to have this enabling factors in this innovation ecosystems working fine. If you don't have the supporting legislative framework, then forget about everything that you put on the table. So it has to be a supporting legislative framework around this. And this applies for regenerative agriculture. If you want to scale up all the things that we're talking about here, we need to address all of those issues.
Do we have a supportive legislative framework? Maurizio, maybe I could ask you. You do represent public research area, and maybe you could comment a little bit on the role which research and development plays in the single market approach, and which type of support can offer the supply chain operators of the EU food systems nowadays and in the next financing period.
Yes, Zivil. To thank you, AT, for the invitation. I can bring my small perspective as head of a small laboratory in Enea Public Research Center. My laboratory, the name is Innovation in Agri-Food Supply Chain. So also trying to interpret the title of our session, Navigating Towards a Competitive Future in Food System, I can say, to reply to the first question, and also our laboratories, our researcher, shall navigate in the food system by shifting their approach. So I am trying to change mission of a laboratory, not to focus on only what is happening inside the laboratory, but also to listen more and more and to allow better dialogue with external stakeholders. Because if we think to the agri-food supply chain, we know the linear way of the supply chain, so the primary production, processing sector, HoReCa, caterer, distribution, and until the final consumer. But which kind of role the researcher, our researcher, can play in the supply chain? They are not outside, they are inside the supply chain. So they have also, we are trying to change a little bit more this mentality to consider us quite outside this debate, this supply chain, because in several ways results from the previous researches from previous projects can help not only small and medium enterprises, but a wide range of food supply chain stakeholders to increase their innovation attitudes and performances. So, for example, we are trying to measure, also from a socio-economic, environmental point of view, our results, our researchers, because we cannot offer into the marketplace, we cannot present or share with our stakeholders results that are not sustainable from also an economic point of view. So this is also an important factor we are trying to consider, and also to multiply chances and occasion of meeting with stakeholders, because it's not only the way to propose them to apply for a certain call or to apply for a certain program. It's a matter to build with them a stable dialogue with a longer perspective. If you think that the case of Italy concerning the agri-food sector, we have more or less 60,000 of
I think if you could hold the
food
microphone a
companies.
little closer.
Sorry,
Yeah, thank
we
you.
have more or less roughly 60,000 of companies, food companies. But above these overall figures, only 7,000 are medium and big companies. So it means that the majority are very micro and small medium enterprises. And agri-food in Italy is the second largest manufacturing sector.
Yeah.
So what does it mean? That there is a big enough unexplored potential space for collaboration. So research laboratories shall also come with commercialization of research in the good term, in the good interpretation of this plan means that to have a catalog, an already existing catalog of results that could be already shared, already communicated to our companies. So this is one of the aspects we are going to collaborate in the next future, but also with a view to be connected with the next programming period. So with the probably with the FP10 program, or let's see what happens.
Thank you so much. Let's hear from the farmer's perspective. Massimiliano, you do coordinate EIT Foods' regenerative agriculture activities in Italy. You yourself have a background in agricultural sciences. What is the perspective of farmers who are bringing to the field the innovation that will be necessary for the sector to build resilience and to maintain competitiveness? Do you have any projects to showcase?
Thank you. And thanks for the question. I think to answer, I'd like to open it with a brief reflection of what competitive actually means. And I ask, just for a second, to understand the audience here, I just ask you for your participation just for a second. Can you please check who here is directly connected to the agricultural sector? Can you please just raise the hand? Okay. Who here engages in the practice of eating food? A bit more. Okay, a little bit more is good. No, but just because I think it's a matter that in one way or the other concerns a little bit everyone if we eat. And it's a reflection I do to introduce you why I'm going to talk about the examples that I'm going to bring you later on. And I was also concerned with the way we eat food, and especially with the fact that food system has on our planet. I mean, we're all here, we're all well aware of the situation we are at. I don't know if you're familiar with the framework of planetary boundaries and the safe operating space for human species on Earth. I read this paper when it came out in 2009. It said like that we overtook 3 planetary boundaries, 3 out of 9. And the updated version of 2023 says that we are overshooting 6 planetary boundaries. So we are moving towards a system that doesn't behave as it behaved for the last 10,000 years. So also agriculture needs to change dramatically if it wants to cope with the way we sustain ourselves, just because conditions will change more and more. And it's interesting because there's not one challenge to overcome, but there are big systemic risks that are tightly interconnecting within each other. And there are powerful feedback loops that reinforce those risks. On the other hand, if you look at the other side of the coin, as there are big systemic risks, there are also big opportunities for systemic solutions. And I start from out of Europe to come here just because I was farming for the last, spent 8 years traveling different countries to see what are the solutions that people are putting into place to identify the so-called positive deviants, the projects that in situations of desperation showcase an approach that is actually working, that is actually improving their environment. I've been in Kenya, in Jordan, in Australia. I ended up in the Netherlands, the University of Wageningen. It's showcasing a great example of integration between research and farming, what Maurizio was speaking about. And so there is a so-called network of lighthouse farms that is putting farmers together, farmers that are powerful examples of how farming can be a great force for the environment where it is. And I come to this because one of the teachers, he was speaking a lot about resilience as the new efficiency. So the agricultural sector has been developed in the last 80 years in a situation of stable condition, or relatively stable conditions. So all our food systems were optimized for efficiency. Now, where conditions are more and more unstable, and farmers are more and more exposed to biotic stresses, think about pests, diseases, abiotic stresses, climate change, biochemical flows that are changing, financial stresses, crises, pandemics. It becomes key to be resilient. And I just make you an example of resiliency from out of Europe, and then I pass it, and then we can go on European examples later on. I make you this because I think it explains very well, and there are data to back it up. It's a friend from Indonesia. She studied a lot rice systems. And rice is the major staple food in the world. So rice systems, you have a conventional way to grow rice, and then they studied the so-called complex rice systems, agricultural systems that combine multiple elements, that you have rice, but you have also azolla, that's a fern to fertilize the field, you have ducks that do the pest control, you have fish that does the pest control and the fertilization underwater, you have agroforestry edges that provide multiple crops and multiple biodiversity services. And it's interesting because they saw that agricultural yields were higher on conventional rice. Like the highest yields you get on conventional rice system. The lowest yields you also get on conventional rice systems. On average, the rice yield was the same. And here you have data to back it up. They have PhD studying this. On average, the complex rice system was giving the same yield on conventional system. But then, in the complex rice system, you have a more stable yield, and you have all the other different products added on top of that. And you have many more services provided by the farm. So this is just to say how resiliency is. Within EIT, now we are doing this in Italy, connected to the pioneer farmers that are showcasing examples of resilience, adaptability, and innovation in the ground. And sorry, I think I go out of time. I speak about some examples later on.
Thank you so much. We have heard some examples. This is the moment where I will just encourage you to ask questions or make your contributions in case you're willing to just raise your hand, and I think I will see you, and we can give you the possibility to speak at any stage of this conversation. Dennis, we have heard examples, not necessarily from Europe, but are they enough to make the agriculture sector to change dramatically, as has been phrased? Or why aren't we making this transition faster if there are so many good examples from everywhere and we have been talking about them on and on for years?
Of course, there are so many examples, nice cases, but when it comes to scaling up, why everybody else is not doing it in Europe? That's the question. And unfortunately, we're not there yet because there's still so many issues that needs to be fixed. Talking about the regenerative agriculture, yes, I mean, you can have the best practices, you can improve the capacity of the farmers, like how they should do this is one thing. At the site, you can talk about with a group of farmers, but that's not enough. I mean, here we're talking about a broader movement in Europe. That means that make more land available for agricultural land, of course, improve the capacity of the farmers, but the whole economics of the regenerative agriculture make this much more efficient. There comes the whole, like, who's going to finance this transformation. Then we need to talk about the whole process. I mean, there has to be a market for this regenerative agricultural products. There has to be retailers out there who can have this on their shelves. There has to be a consumer acceptance. There has to be a consumer demand driven from, I don't know, maybe the public procurement power of the municipalities. So we have to look at the whole system. And if we don't include all these things, and if we just go to an individual farmer and say that, look, I mean, if you're doing the conventional agricultural here, but if you do this, then you will have much more resilient, you will have the benefits, maybe you will, if you're lucky, you will get some payment schemes for your ecosystem services that you provide. That's not enough. And relying all the risk, or like leaving all the risk to the farmers, not equally distributing it for the rest of the supply chain, it doesn't simply work. So we need to have the systems perspective. We need to look into these new business models around that can support this transformation.
In terms of business models, what are we lacking?
As I said, I mean, the business models has to include all the way from farmers, even the suppliers to the farmers to the end consumers. So like if I mentioned the public procurement power, like if the municipality says that, I mean, if you do it this way in a regenerative agriculture practices, then there's a market. I'll buy what you produce, so that the farmer can take this risk. And then because we're talking about certain problematic areas there may be some like reduction in the yield during this transitions period. So somehow we need to distribute this risk along the supply chain.
Not just a matter of incentives, it's also a matter to empower, starting from the primary sector, so farmers, for example, to empower them with innovative solutions so they can have a better consideration and a better representativeness in the supply chains. Also to work with food processors until the end of a consumer. So also working to this new or modern business models can also imply to work on shorter supply chains. So to have a differentiation, starting also from the needs and the evocation from the territories. So also to have this compromise from a top-down approach, so translating into practical lines, the programming lines from the research opportunities, but also going down from a bottom-up approach, also listening and observing and screening the needs from the rural communities, because in the in-between, in this combination, there is chance for all range and types of food actors to find their behavior.
Yes, Dennis.
I also wanted to add, like, this I only just gave the regenerative agriculture as an example, but it's not in a silo. It's linked to the all things that we try to do in the in the food systems transformation. So yesterday we had a whole dedicated session on like how protein diversification and regen ag can go hand in hand, because regenerative agriculture, we're talking about a variety of different crops with cover crops and with different rotations. So different harvesting times. Potentially there's so much like protein crops there, and what would be the new income for the farmers, and not only related to the protein crops, but we're talking about this biotechnology, the important role of biotechnology. I mean, you can produce grass and then you can get directly the proteins from the grass without the animal in between. There's no reason why the farmers can involve in like having their cultivated meat, the small-scale bioreactors on their farms, and produce half the meat, not from the traditional way, but from this reactor. So what are these new features? What are these new opportunities out there? And how we can get this information to the farmers and try to de-risk the whole transition period. So there's a lot of opportunities out there that needs to be considered in the discussions as well.
Massimiliano, you wanted to say something as well? Let's see if there are any comments or questions in the audience. We have roughly 10 minutes left, and we need to, I understand that the topic is rather broad, but we do need to come up with a list of recommendations. Current commission, meaning short term, and then long term. The major report is on the desk. We discussed it. What do we have to do? What else could we do so that next time we meet, we don't have to say we still need to come up with new business models? How do we make the transition faster? How do we make it scale? What are the next steps each of us in your field would have to do for Europe to be competitive and to make progress faster?
If I may just come back a moment to what was said before, because I left with out of Europe, but there is also, of course, a lot in Europe and in particular in Italy going on. And I think I just mentioned a few examples that are also related to some specific needs that should be targeted if we want to put regenerative agriculture at scale. And I mentioned some examples to make it grounded a little bit and to be a bit concrete. One farm we're working at, for example,
if we could all kind of keep the microphones closer to our lips, I think that would be easier for everyone.
This you think?
Yes, this is better. Thank you.
Thank you. One example is a farm that is producing rice. That's not a major. This is in Italy, close to Pavia, Cascina Bosco Fornasara. It's not a major crop in Italy, but it's super important worldwide. And rice is amazing because water systems are very powerful in healing the landscape or destroying it. It depends how you deal with them. And this is a farm that is working in a beautiful way and has been bringing back, I don't tell you agronomically now, otherwise it takes so long. If somebody's interested, just come to talk later. But they say they managed to bring back a thriving, functional landscape in their farm. From a desert of water, we created an oasis. And if you see, the fields of the neighbors have no life, and their farm seems like a WWF reserve. So it's truly amazing. neighboring rice farmers at the beginning were kind of calling them fool, and now their neighboring rice farmers are buying rice from them. So it's just how the situation is, in which world are we living? Anyway, a lot of things are going on, and we are a successful example of implementation of regional technique. An interesting thing I think about the business model, they are diversifying, and here comes back to resilience as a form of competitiveness. They are diversifying their sales channels. They have a thriving community of buyers that they are engaging also through social media and all type of communication activities. But they also sell to a retailer that is selling to restaurants at a national scale. So like there's two different channels. During COVID, for example, restaurants, of course, went very down with sales, but community buyers rose up. So that's one example of resiliency, I think creates competitiveness. What they need, in their case, they need field research. So there is a need to research landscape appropriate agronomical practices because they keep experimenting and it's not easy and they bear all the cost of experimentation. So with EIT, one thing we are trying to support with the advisory program is also with field research. We made the connection with a university that is putting a thesis student and with a startup that is financing a trial. And so there are some experimental plots now going on. But I think diffused farm research is a major need of a lot of farmers I talk to. Just another example, another great farm in the Po Valley. We go to the east of Italy. They're producing grains. They are also selling both to flour to the local community, but also soy and oats to a big company that is making a milk-like product. So even here, diversification of outcomes. And in their case, for example, great system. Also there, it's the only place where you can see around all flat, no trees, and their farm is like a little oasis. So if you need some contact to places to see, let's speak later. In their case, it's a bit different because they don't have secure land access. So they are renting the land. Land there is very expensive. It's about 40 to 50,000 euros per hectare. And they are threatened by the owner because the contract is running out after several years. The owner selling the land. So we are now working on setting up a foundation to buy land and to give it to who has the skills and the will to steward it in a regenerative direction. Also here we can speak later if somebody is interested. A foundation that works together with a school to train future land stewards. This is, and the last example, and then
And the schools, are they enthusiastic about this? Are they willing to participate?
So the training program so far is not at this stage, so this will be the future stage. So far the training program has been, I would say, successful. Then of course you have territories that respond different and you have a lot of lessons to be learned. But it feels like there is a new generation that, there is a big separation. New generation that is totally detached from the land and a new generation that starts to feel the urge to root back in natural systems. And I think we are speaking with the ones that are already willing. We don't want to convince anybody. We are speaking with the people that are already moved in this direction. And I mean, the last example I don't tell because I don't want to take time from other speakers, but other needs that often come out. So there is diffuse research, land access, the development of appropriate technology. Small scale no-till seeders is a very it's a very mechanical thing. This you could find a solution, but like if nobody develops it, it's not accessible to small-scale farmers. And most of Italian farmers, average farm size is 8 to 10 hectares. So that's another big topic that often comes out. And new business models. There are many farms, for example, the rice farms I was telling you about before, that their community is asking them to buy more products because, yeah, you buy rice, you buy beans, but you also need vegetables, you also need oil. And they would have the capacity to stack enterprises. So that's, I think that's the next step of regenerative agriculture, integrated systems with stacked enterprises. But we don't have at the moment business models to connect aspiring entrepreneurs to existing farm. I mean, I'm in touch with people that are experimenting, but it's not so straightforward. And accountants are becoming a bit crazy in how to deal with it in a way that makes sense.
So you don't have entrepreneurs, a platform or a tool to connect entrepreneurs with farmers, is what you're saying?
I think it's more the actual legal way to structure it, to structure the collaboration. you have some specific forms, but either have very high costs and are becoming not so feasible, especially in the first years that you start, or some, yeah, I mean, to being completely legal is not so easy. That's why we need ways to, so that people can access the land legal. Just to say, I think because about scaling, Dennis mentioned before, we always speak about scaling, but there are actually different types of scaling, and we just like to point this out because I think here is where we can collaborate. There is scaling out, scaling wide, so taking success examples and replicating them. And the amazing thing is that we do have success examples around, so that we already have. But to scale them, we need, for example, to tackle some of the issues I was mentioning. Then there is scaling up, changing the regulatory system in a way that favors agroecological and regenerative innovation. And for that, Tullio read something before, and I hope he has full support for that. And then there is scaling deep, changing the narratives, changing the way we feel, the way we perceive ourselves as beings that are in jubilance with the rest of nature. And that's up to everyone to nurture the connection that we have with the land and where we source our food. So just to say this, I think we are already collaborating a bit with the research institute, with lawyers, with accountants, and with local politicians, with agro-industry, of course. If any of you is interested in seeing how we can cooperate to scale some success examples of regional ag in Italy, let's just speak later on.
Yes, thank you for being so open for contact making. Dennis, what would we really require to improve competitiveness?
I will just build up on that and then answer your questions. I think what we need, I will just spontaneously include this like scaling in synergy, because we need to have a good narrative. Without that, this transformation, we will not reach that speed that we wish for. There will always be some barriers, somebody, if it's not included in this narratives. If everybody has their role in this transformation, if we can all just have these ticks in the system saying that this is your win, this is your win, this is your win, and this is the only way of like accelerating this transformation. Otherwise, we will just continue talking, as you said, like next year we're here, we will be still talking about this thing. So it's a complex, dynamic system. I'm a systems analyst, systems dynamics modeling. This is what I do. Listen, all parts of this complex system, different sectors, different actors involved in that. So unless we cannot come up with a proper narrative, what we're doing, how we're doing, but most importantly, why we're doing this, I think this transformation will take ages to be a reality.
But when you say that we need that different narrative, I think that Massimiliano was also talking about regulatory framework. Is there any element that is missing so that when we change it, we would be more open to this new narrative, or is it not a problem of regulatory?
Definitely. I mean, for the protein diversification, this is a very key leverage point. I mean, there's so much is happening. There's products out there, processes out there. But if the regulatory framework is not there, then this doesn't happen. So it goes to Singapore, to US, to other parts of the world. So that's a key thing. But of course, I mean, there has to be the background there as well. I mean, there's so much question marks at the moment. So the allergens, the anti-nutrients, so we're producing novel food. Of course, it has to like directly link to your human health. So there are things that needs to be clarified there. But the whole regulatory framework should be something there to help and then like go faster so that this brain drainage is not happening. And that's related to your competitiveness. Like if Europe wants to be competitive in the future food systems, specifically with biotechnology, then they need to act fast. They need to do the things not waiting too long. And that's why actually with the Commission, they came up last summer and now most recently this summer with this research programs, the funding, so it's like cost of inaction. If we don't do it now, what would be losing in terms of competitiveness?
Thank you. Maurizio.
Yes, just to integrate the issue of the regulatory framework, it is a very important variable in the supply chain mechanism and potential success, also for the competitiveness civil. So to come to your question, it's not a matter only to follow the regulatory framework, but also it should be a matter for agri-food supply chain operators to have a stable and not to have an uncertain regulatory framework. So it's very important to have a clear a vision, but also to know before the rules of the games. So which are really the fundamental drivers behind the future policies and the future regulatory frameworks. So we can all together in a collective way try to put on the floor the real and concrete drivers behind the framework, because they will be influencing not only policies, but policies are influencing in a good manner, but also in a bad manner, investment and strategies, business strategies of companies, but also farmers. So to have to lead competitiveness increasing the next years, we should try to crystallize, to have specific and certain variables from the regulatory framework. Otherwise, agri-food supply chain and also people working with or for companies, with or with farmers, cannot be able really to cooperate and to suggest the good strategies and good solution also at technological level to them.
Thank you so much. Crystallizing specific variables from regulatory framework is your key phrase. Tullio, do you have a final comment? How does that go in line with the famous report that you presented?
Yes, I believe, hearing what you said, that we need to keep together three fundamental dimensions. It's the local, the regional, the global. The pandemic, the war has proven to us that global supply chains are vulnerable. So we need to find this link between the global and the local. It doesn't mean we have to give up the global level, but we need to keep them together. And in terms of a regulatory framework, and again here it's the regional level that's important. It's the European Union level, because yes, we need rules that are certain, that are clear, but at the same time, to allow scalability, to allow our companies to grow, to compete, we need also one format, one legislative regulatory format for all. And there is one idea, and there is the report that comes up to my mind, that is the idea of a 28th regime, the fact that we have 27, as I said, different regimes. It would be useful to have a 28th regime that doesn't substitute the national regime. It's an add-on, it's a virtual state, let's call it like this, an opt-in mechanism, so companies, also startups, can opt for this mechanism, for these clear rules at the European level for the entire European market to grow fast and to compete. This could be probably a solution that on one hand helps on the regulatory side, but it also would give a more certainty, more vision, more linearity for companies. So I conclude saying this, it's about keeping these dimensions together.
Thank you so very much. Thank you, Tullio. Thank you, everybody. We will continue with the session number 2 at 12:25 here, so there will be a break. But before that happens, I want to ask you all to give a big round of applause to the panelists of the Navigating Towards a Competitive Future in Food Systems session. Thanks a lot, and see you in 35 minutes. Welcome back. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to our second session at the Fair and Resilient Food System track. I hope that more of you gather. Has anyone had a chance to explore the market area yet? I encourage you to do that later. Has anyone managed to have coffee over a short break if they had any? Okay, I will encourage that as well. There will be a lunch break afterwards. But before we break for lunch, there is a very inspiring Spark and Do session. And I would just like to call the partnership team, and I would just like to call Jane Brookman on stage. If you could give her a big round of applause, she will then do the whole show. The floor is yours.
Thank you, everyone. So, as just said, my name's Jane Brookman. Several of you, I think, have been in the earlier sessions, but I'm still Director of Partner Recruitment at EIT Food, and it is still my pleasure to welcome you to this session. So, this is the third of the partnership-led sessions based around our missions, and we've entitled them spark and do. So we're hoping that you will be able to physically get up a little bit rather than just sit in your chairs. But the aim is to give you a little bit of a taster of the power of networking, and also the power of aligned networks around the actual missions that we're dealing with here. And we're talking today about data and digitalization in this session. I think on the next slide, I don't know whether I've got a clicker. Somebody? Thank you. Thank you very much. So we should have, no, we need to go back. I just wanted to highlight that the partnership team, and many of the partnership team individuals are actually here today. And if they're not in this session, please do make sure that you get to talk to this great team. They're going to help us with the session today. We're going to start off with 2 post talks, and then we're going to actually break off after that and have a face-to-face discussion. Now, our 2 speakers today very kindly have agreed to provide their viewpoint on what we can do, what needs to be done around data and digitalisation in the food system. So the first of these is Mike Collier, from a strategic consultant at McLaren Racing. Not that you get too much food inside that car, I wouldn't say, Mike, but... And then the second is James Peach, who is he's a senior pre-sales consultant and FMCG regulatory specialist at NIQ Brand Bank. So both of those are going to come up, give their short talks. We will then split up and have a bit of a discussion around some of the thoughts that maybe have been triggered by those discussions. So may I start with asking Mike to come up? Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. Hopefully everyone can hear me. Very good. Lots of nodding heads. So, first of all, I'm Mike Collier. I'm the Director of Strategic Partnerships at McLaren Racing. I've worked for McLaren for about 10 years now. And I work with a number of our technology providers, some of those that you'll see on the screen there, the likes of Google, Cisco, and Dell. And what we try to do is to help those companies leverage data that they already have in a more efficient, effective, more accurate, quicker way. One of the other companies, however, that we work with is a company called Salus Optima. And that's super important for the purpose of today, because most people often ask, what is it that McLaren are doing, a Formula One race company, in the food industry? And hopefully today I'll give a little bit of an overview of the work that we're doing with Salus Optima in the food industry. And over the course of the next 5 to 10 minutes, hopefully it will get the creative juices going to understand and to begin to think about how can data and digitization be used in your world, in your business, to facilitate the agri-food supply chain. So a little bit more about Salus Optima. They are a UK-based company. They are a software and AI company, and I've been working with them since 2018, and they are a partner of McLaren. And they develop products and services, digital products, digital services, for 4 main industries, but 2 that are probably most relevant for the audience here are in consumer packaged goods and consumer health companies. So the likes of PepsiCo, Unilever, they work with ingredient companies, IFF, Sigma Alimentus, but also the likes of Bayer, Sanofi, and Walgreens. And effectively, what McLaren does with these guys is we help them in 3 ways. So we help them when it comes to collecting new and novel data that they then use with their partners. We help them then cleanse, structure, tag that data so that it can then be used, and then we integrate AI as a component of the solution to help them then interrogate the data for the partners with which they work. So it's a complete solution. The end solution could look a little bit like a mobile application, or it could be more of something that sits on the desktop. Salus Optimum themselves, they are a delivery partner of EIT Food, so their services are in principle available for the EIT network. They have also become a partner for the Healthy Aging think tank, and in 2023 they were successful in gaining some investment for EIT Food to deliver a personalised nutrition experience with Compass Group, which is the world's largest food service provider in personalised nutrition, and that was a focus on healthy lives through food, so mission 1 for EIT. So it's quite an interesting company that we work with, and I'm going to just run through a couple of case studies, use cases, where data and digitization has been used to drive value add for the partners that Salus Optima works with. So the first use case, and I've heard a lot about it over the last 24 hours, is around regulation and how much of a challenge regulation actually is. So we've been working with a global pharma company, but it's their consumer health division. They sell vitamins, minerals and supplements over in the US, over in Australia. They do the US, but that's not the case study. And anyone that knows anything about Australia will know that vitamin mineral supplement is a regulated product. It has to be regulated by the TGA, similar to the FDA in the US and EMA over in Europe. And what that process follows is I'll describe it. The regulators have to be able to go and scan the market, scan relevant publications for research that aligns to the active ingredients that sit within those products that go to market. And that's a very, very lengthy process. It's constantly changing, written in different languages. Some of that is good research, some of it maybe less so. And once they've then looked and found that research, they then need to critique that research. And then they fill in a claim substantiation template related to each and every one of those pieces of research. And there could be hundreds of them associated with a particular ingredient. Once they've then done that, they then have to then go and fill in their medical claim substantiation document. That then gets submitted to the TJ for review. On the assumption that that then gets approved, that product can then go to market with the associated claims because it's then backed by the research. That takes regulators about 3 weeks to complete. And this company has 83 active ingredients inside a variety of different products. And so when you do the maths, that works out to be about 1,700 days to complete that for all of the active ingredients. And they've gone from 15 down to 3 regulators. So if you then divide that by 3, that's 560 days, which means that they physically cannot complete the work that is required in order to continually review the products that are in market. So the challenge really is how can we develop a productivity tool that allows the 3 regulators to remain up to date so that the company themselves are not missing out on new research and that their products are in market and they are aligned to the relevant claims. So what we have effectively done and working with this company on is leveraging our AI capability and going back to those 3 things that we spoke about, helping to collect data, helping to structure data, and then helping to interrogate data. We effectively can go and tap into through their permissions and their subscriptions into things like PubMed. And we can then, through semantic searching, find identical matches or words that are similar to what it is that they're looking for to be able to then autonomously find the research that they're looking for. So they do not now manually have to then go and find that research. Once that research has been found by the AI, we then effectively auto-populate the claim substantiation templates, which means that that is then automatically populated, and then moving forward, it is then also writing the claim substantiation documents. And effectively, it can do this in the first pass in about 2.5 hours. What that then means is the regulators will then review that, and then they can interrogate that with a full audit trail to understand where the research came from, are they happy with it, do they need to go back and ask further questions, further points of clarification before then that can go through. And what this now means is this is a tool that consumer health company can then go and use, can get product to market, ensure that they're compliant, and also potentially look to find white space in the market. So that's a pretty good example, I think, of how data, digitization, artificial intelligence is being used in a controlled way to be able to drive productivity in the regulators, not taking away their jobs, but just enabling them to do more of other things effectively. And then the second and final use case is for an ingredient company. So this is a competitive market analysis tool that we're developing with them. This is, as I said, a global ingredient company, and it's actually the US part of the business that we're working with. And what they're looking for is they're looking to be able to get real-time data of what's actually happening in market. They're interested in vitamins, mineral supplements. They're interested in pre, post, and probiotics. They want to understand what ingredients are in each of those products that are going to market. They want to understand what active ingredients and the dosage that's in there. They want to know the packaging. They want to know the price. They want to know the pack size. They want to understand the claims. So there's a huge amount of information that this company wants to understand related to what's happening, and they want to be able to do this in real time. They've trialed a number of providers in the past that fundamentally, this is their words, it was just a ChatGPT wrapper that effectively wasn't able to do what they actually wanted to do. And so what they've offered us really is, and they've provided us with 8 research documents, so things like Mintel, Nielsen reports, and they've also provided us with some live data, because effectively, on the assumption that we can do what they're interested in, all we then need to do is add more data sets into it to be able to then address their problems, and they pose us a series of questions within that. So it's a massive project, but we've broken it up not only by minimizing the amount of data that's coming in, but really by working with them to understand what are the key features and functionality that they will need in order to be able to use this going forward. So I'm just going to quickly run you through what it is that we've done with them. So the very first thing that anyone will talk to you about when it comes to AI is everyone's really scared about actually using it from a business standpoint. And so what we need to be able to do is we need to make sure that it's safe and it's secure, it's deployed on-prem or in their own cloud infrastructure, AWS, Microsoft Azure, whichever that is, and effectively you've got a single sign-on, so it's representative of the credentials and the permissions that each and every one of their staff has access to. So that's the first thing that was a requirement. The second thing then, and the second image relates to being able to upload documents. So if they have their own research or the ability to plug in an SQL database that's got live data coming in, how do we get that in an easy to use way, which is the second part. And then effectively we've got a variety of different front ends that the company can use. So yes, there's a chat feature that will enable an individual to be able to ask questions on the data. We have a configurable tabular view, so effectively all of the rows, or all of the columns, should I say, along the top, you can just change those through a chat feature, and then the AI will go and source the information, pull it back in, so you've got a view that is consistent with what you want to be able to see. It can create tables, it can create charts, and then finally, based on templates that were provided, it can then create business reports. So it's a powerful tool that enables that ingredient company to remain current with live data coming in. And while I appreciate that it's not a supply chain per se related problem, the technology is consistent and can be leveraged and used across for a variety of different use cases. Because effectively, once you can do that, then you have a knowledge transfer capability that can be used for any business in the food industry. So you can be looking at consumer insights, you can be looking at supplier insights, channel insights, product performance, and then you can then be pointing it towards different parts within an organization, be that regulation, marketing, and R&D, to help drive productivity within a business. In terms of the key things that we learned, just to conclude, firstly, that data remains king, but it's only good quality data. We spend a huge amount of time cleansing the data so that effectively the AI can find the data in a quick and effective way and bring back answers that are accurate. As I said, companies remain hugely nervous about AI, but all of our deployments are on-prem or in their cloud infrastructure, so effectively it's no different to them using Teams or sending emails. The data doesn't go anywhere, it stays with them. The end user experience is super important to understand. You know, you're trying to create a solution that saves them time, so they don't want to be spending 3, 4, 5 weeks trying to figure out how to use this thing. So understanding that UI and UX is super important. And then the final thing is that this is a rapidly evolving world of technology. There is a limited amount of resource to be able to do this, and companies are finding it difficult to know where on earth even to start. They're often turning internally within their own IT teams. Our experience will say that that will just get bogged down because effectively they've got their own things to be doing, and then you're adding this on top. And so effectively looking for third parties that can come in and help them get started is a way in which we're managing to secure contracts to work with people. So hopefully that provides a bit of an overview of the work that McLaren are doing with Salus Optima in the food industry, and helps generate some thoughts around how technology like this can be used and leveraged in your world. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is James Peach. I'm an FMCG regulatory specialist working for NIQ Brand Bank, and I specialise particularly in the application of food information law in the digital sector. And I'm going to be sharing with you some of my thoughts on the future of consumer-facing digital food information shortly. And I apologise in advance for the pace with which I'm going to get through this, because there's a lot to cover in a short space of time. So I'll just give you 60 seconds of background around NIQ Brand Bank as to what we do. We work with hundreds of retailers, thousands of brand manufacturers, distributing over 50 million digital assets annually. That equates to around about 500,000 live FMCG, fast-moving consumer goods products within our product database at any one time. Most of those are grocery products, some are non-grocery. We've been doing this for 25 years, and we're in 39 markets globally. We support the e-com industry, we drive apps, we provide data for research purposes. Forgive the non-food example, but it illustrates quite nicely what we do. We take high quality images of the product, we capture all of the data from that product, we create a digital product package that goes back to the brand manufacturer. Only once they have approved that package can it then be distributed for use in e-com channels, etc., as I've explained. So that's a very brief bit of background as to what NIQ Brand Bank does. So as I said, I'm going to talk to you about the future of digital consumer-facing food information and share some of my thoughts on what that might mean. And I think it's probably useful to frame it within the context of the 4 questions that you can see in the blue boxes. The first, what does the future look like? I think we're going to see absolutely more reliance on 2D barcodes. QR codes are a good example of a 2D barcode. And the industry is moving ahead at pace with this already. There is an industry set requirement by the end of 2027 for all traders to be able to scan a 2D barcode at point of sale. And certainly we see within the EU regulatory framework increasing recognition and reliance on 2D barcodes. We have digital product passports, we have the general product safety regulation, and within food, some of you will probably be aware, no doubt, of the wine labelling regulations that were updated recently, so that a disclosure of ingredient and some nutrition information can be made via a 2D barcode. The interesting thing there is that that is in the alternative to providing that on the label. And therein lies some interesting policy discussions. So that takes us quite nicely to question 2, how will food regulations and policy need to adapt? So many of you may be already familiar with the distance selling regulations we've had now for 10 years in the EU. And those really are designed to inform the consumer of their purchasing decisions. Okay, so it's about providing certain key mandatory food information prior to purchase. Now, a 2D barcode certainly has a role to play there. It can be scanned prior to purchase, but it is ongoing in nature. It can be scanned 2 months after purchase when the consumer finally gets around to taking it out of their kitchen cupboard and having a look and scanning that product. And do we have the necessary regulatory framework in place to safeguard the fidelity of that information ongoing? What I mean by that is, you can see here I refer to 2-tier systems, and we need to avoid that. In NIQ Brand Bank, we spend a lot of time and energy ensuring that the digital product version that I talked about at the beginning cannot deviate in any way from what is true of the physical product. We don't allow manufacturers to change anything that's compositional in nature, so they can't change ingredient information or nutrition information without us first having a physical product that is reflective of that change, so that we can make sure that the digital product actually matches what is out there in the market. You can't have a 2-tier system. So it's definitely something in the world of 2D barcodes and this kind of nature of ongoing disclosures that needs perhaps some closer scrutiny. And we see, in fact, that notwithstanding that, the industry is certainly keen to move forward in this area. The Digital Consumer Information Alliance recently wrote an open letter to the EU Commission championing what they call the dematerialization of food labels to provide more of this information digitally. And it's going to be an interesting debate as we go forward, because as I've already mentioned, in the wine labeling world, the door has already been opened to being able to do this. So an interesting space to watch there. Away from regulations and policy specifically, what are some of the other biggest challenges for the future of consumer-facing food information? Definitely where you're going to enable the industry at large to speak about their products more easily in greater voice, then you're always going to have to be on guard against the spectre of unsubstantiated claims, whether those are green environmental claims, nutrition and health claims, or any other type of voluntary food information. Yes, we certainly need to make sure that unsubstantiated claims are kept an eye on. I've also said here, avoid incoherent policy multiple 2D barcodes. What am I talking about here? Coming back to the wine example, you may not know that if you do choose to provide ingredient and nutrition information about your wine product using a 2D barcode, that the rules require that there can be no marketing, no commercial information at all accompanying that disclosure. Now, if you happen to be a wine producer that has some fantastic sustainability narrative that you want to talk about and perhaps also disclose via a 2D barcode, you would at the moment, as the policy stands, have to do that using a separate 2D barcode. And so you can see just within the wine sector, let alone wider food sector, that there could, if we're not careful, be sort of an incoherent policy development here requiring multiple QR codes on a product, which would be a bit of a nonsense of a situation really for a technology that's designed to effectively clean labels really. But rather than just focusing on all the challenges and the sort of doom and gloom, let me end on some positive notes here, because if we get this right, and I believe we can, there's definitely some massive benefits for the industry using 2D barcodes. It's certainly far more agile. It can respond to unforeseen events, whether that's product recalls or withdrawals, communicating directly to the consumer about the product they have in their hand. There are environmental benefits associated with dematerializing a label. So you may need less label material, less ink, less energy to produce those labels. There's environmental benefits there. I've also talked about improved food safety opportunities. So imagine a situation where date marks are incorporated within a QR code, such that the operative in store at the checkout, at the final point of defense, if you like, a last line of defense before the product goes out to the consumer, if the checkout operative is able to scan a product and see, oh, actually this has a used by date that's expired or is close to expiry. So some real useful applications, tangible applications in food safety. And of course, there are well-rehearsed narratives around improved traceability and transparency, which I'm not going to go into here in the interests of time. But those are some of my thoughts. You may disagree, you may agree. It'd be great to have a conversation. I think I'm supposed to provoke a bit of debate, so maybe that's done that. Thank you for listening. Cheers.
Is that working? Yeah. I'd like to thank both Mike and James for their boost talks at the beginning. We now will segregate into different groups to have a... Are we going to go for 2 groups, Alicia? I think we're going to go for 2 groups. Do look quite large for 2 groups, but a little bit of dissent within the ranks here. So if we can basically take this first column of people to go to the left there, to the right, your left. This column here to that first one, and then maybe the people in the middle over to Alicia here. So the idea is that we will have a discussion. We can take our actual headsets off and talk to one another about these areas and think about what it is that we can do in data and digitalisation. Thank you very much.
Welcome back. This is a message to everyone. The 3 tracks are resuming, so wherever you are, whichever track you want to attend, do join one of the sessions, and you're most welcome to do that. We are resuming. We are starting with the session number 3 in just a couple of seconds. I hope that you did enjoy your lunch, and I think I'll go into a silent mode in a second, so this was the last message for everybody. We are about to resume, so do choose your tracks and enjoy the really good and intense content that we are experiencing today. So, I hope that you did have a nice lunch and managed to relax a bit. And time really does fly. We are already moving to the 3rd session of today. I asked in the beginning if anyone was very much enthusiastic about protein diversification, and a lot of people raised their hands. And I did ask that question because I knew that there was a session on it. European food security and competitiveness. Protein diversification is a must for it. So we will explore the crucial role of protein diversification in bolstering food security and minimizing environmental impact. Let us now, in this session, as you gather, I will read on about it, how diversifying protein sources supports resilience and reduces environmental impact. And we will explore strategies for enhancing EU competitiveness and reducing import dependence through investments in alternative proteins. I will ask you to join me in welcoming the session's moderator, who is co-founder of Shake Up Factory, EIT Food Protein Diversification Think Tank member, Kevin Comfers. Sorry, you'll have
You did it. You did it. Thank you very much. So a lot of big words, but a very nice session, I promise, because we are surrounded with very nice people, starting with Marie-Louise. So let me welcome Marie-Louise Bolson-Lendel. Marie-Louise is the founder and the CEO of an association which is named Frey. We are learning a lot of new words. And Frey is a think tank also, like the protein diversification, but this think tank is also a do tank. You would explain us why and how, and you're engaging with young sustainability generation and food producers together. And together you're creating increasingly sustainable food Denmark through knowledge, dialogue and cooperation. You will introduce the session and then we will have a discussion. But before you introduce the session, I would like also you to welcome on stage Max. Max Schulman is unique in many ways. I had the pleasure to meet with him some months ago, and you couldn't imagine how many lives he has in one single man, because he is a farmer, he is a
European citizen, as all of you, and an innovator also.
Yeah, and you also are much committed in many European associations and discussion at European level. And you know, and you will share a lot about your experience as a farmer for protein diversification. Then we have Francesco. Francesco Montanari. He used to be, he had a past activity at the Commission itself, but now he's working for a company which is named Arcadia, and one of the reasons why he's here is beyond his knowledge around regulation. His company has been tasked to work on different topics, one being the sustainable food system framework policy, which I learned recently, and we will have the opportunity to talk about it, but also he's been co-authoring a report that was issued earlier this year, commissioned by the Parliament on alternative protein sources for food in Europe. And last but not least, Cleona, who you will see has also multiple lives, because she used to be working for the Commission, she used to be working for Climate Cake, then she created Foundation Earth, and since some months, Foundation Earth is now part of EIT Food, and I will tell more about it in some minutes. So this topic of protein diversification is vast. We wanted to make it digestible after lunch. And so we start with the beautiful presentation of the beautiful Marie-Louise.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for letting me speak for you today. My name is Marie-Louise. I am the founder and CEO of the food think tank Frej, where we have, and what I will present for you today is a Danish case where we have established a plant-based food grant where all the political parties from left to right has agreed on making this plant food-based grant, supporting all kind of startups, organizations that will promote a whole new value chain on plant-based food. And that's my second role, is that I'm chairman of this grant established by the government. Another role I have is that I'm a board member of several food companies. I'm working very closely together with them, especially Ingleby Farms. Lots of you talk about regenerative farming. They are one of the biggest companies in the world, and they are only producing using the regenerative farming practices. So that's just a little bit about me. But before I go to the case that I want to introduce to you, so you can take the change model and hopefully use it in your countries to make the same kind of change. So I won't go into the deep about why plant-based food is better than animal-based food. I think and hope you all know that, but more about how can we make the change happen. And first I want to know you a little bit. So I want you to raise your hand if you like to read more like right-wing newspapers compared to more left-wing newspapers. So this is like the right and the left-wing newspapers. So raise your hand if you prefer like the right-wing newspapers. Vote now. Yeah, thank you. Okay, raise your hand if you prefer to eat more vegetables, more vegan than animal-based. So raise your hand if you prefer to eat more vegan. Okay, I actually expected exactly that. The reason I ask this is that we have what is called confirmation bias, which is all our minds. We talk with the people that we agree on. We read the same newspapers. We go to the same conferences where we all read the left wing newspapers and eat the vegetables instead of the meat. You know, it's the same people we talk with. When I ask this question to the farmers organization, the farmers that I work with, I can tell you, everyone stand up when it say, raise if you eat meat, stand up if you read the right-wing newspapers. So we live in bubbles, and we need to change these bubbles, and you also need to go out of this bubble. And I have tried to expand this bubble myself. And we started to build bridge from field to fork with the aim to create a food production and consumption within the planetary boundaries. That's our aim, and we do it by making collaboration between farmers and food organization and the young generation who works in sustainability, because we can see that they live in separate bubbles and they don't talk to each other, and we need to expand in that. I was raised on a farm, conventional big farm producing feed for the animal sector. A farm girl from the countryside, and here a picture of me who have just killed an eel before I knew it was endangered, eating lots of meat. But I ended up now promoting plant-based food. This is a picture of me together with the Ministry of Food and Agriculture, having this established new fund with millions of Danish crowns to promote this sector. So how did that change happen? It's all about confirmation bias, trying to provoke, talk with other people. I lived on the countryside. I always thought and fight for the farmers. But when I studied political science in Copenhagen, I met people who were very different from me. They provocated me. I hated them. But after speaking again and again, I understood where they came from and also changed my own mindset. And that is what's going to happen. And in Denmark, that's really important because we are among the one in the world who eats most animal-based food, more also than the European average. We're also the one in Denmark who produces more pigs and more meat, most meat per capita compared to the rest of the world. So how did Denmark become world leading in promoting plant-based food and also having a plant-based action plan, the first in the world of a plant-based food action plan and grant? That is what the case is about. How did that happen? And it's not even just a plant-based grant, it's actually a whole law in Denmark saying that we have this fund for plant-based food. So it can't be changed. It's in the law. You have to have the full political agreement changed if we're gonna stop this plant-based grant. And it actually took money from the animal or from the agricultural funds and put it over in this new legislation, in this new fund. It got lots of international attention all over the world for having this new grant. And it was agreed upon all the political parties from left to the right. And there's many steps for making this animal-based country suddenly be the world leading in plant-based food. But the most important one is this one. It's a paper that is 8 recommendations for developing a plant-based sector. And it was launched by the Danish Vegetarian Society, my organization, FREI, it's not important, but more important, the Food and Agricultural Council. So all the farmers' union went together with the Danish Vegetarian Society with recommendations how to achieve more plant-based food. This is a mix of 2 very different partners joining together. And the Vegetarian Society is normally more convincing the right-wing parties, where the agricultural councils, the politician on the right wing will listen to them. Joining together, then you have the whole of the whole parties. And before that, we had a long journey. I talked with thousands of farmers being on the road telling about sustainability and all what I've learned at university, talking with the young generation, to change the mindset of farmers so they wouldn't be afraid of all the sustainability changes that will come, so they won't feel a threat for the artificial meat that's coming, but see it as a business opportunity that they also could go into. That's what we have been talking to, so it's possible for the Agricultural and Food Council to lean in to this new wave of protein diversification. Of course, we also have like big scientists and the Novo Nordisk Foundation telling how important it is public in the media and to politicians. We have Concito, a big think tank, also promoting how important the food sector is for our climate footprint. 20% of the Danish footprint come from the food we eat because of the amount of meat we are eating. Before that, we have the dietary guidelines, which is the government who makes some guidance of what we have to eat as a Dane. And before it was full of meat, now they changed it, so it states that we need to eat 100 grams of legumes every day. Today we eat between 2 and 5 grams per day, so a really huge change is needed. And that we only need 350 grams of meat every week. Today it's 1 kilograms of meat we're eating. So they also try to say we need a change here. The Green Organization also went together trying to say we need another food system and promoted that. And we actually see that even the animal industry, because we also collaborate a lot with the food industry, Arla, Danish Crown, maybe some of you know them, they have promoted plant-based food, made their own product line with plant-based food, so they don't afraid of it, they don't work against it, but also try to develop it in their, also investing in plant-based food. And that's how you need to engage with the industry to make them invest in the new transition so they won't fight it, but lean into it. The Dava Foods is a big company that's owned by farmers. They have also invested billions of crowns in new legumes grown on Danish farms, investing much money to go into the plant-based food. And the whole thing is that we need to talk with the people we are different from. And instead of just talking with scientists and young generation and people who already know sustainability, talk with the one who is most against the green transition, so we can make the change. And in the Danish model that's leading the way right now, the government has sit together with the Danish Agricultural Council and the Danish Nature Organization, promoting the first carbon emission tax on agriculture ever in the world. It is voted for probably next week. It will be voted for, so we will have the first carbon emission tax on agriculture. And there's no tractors demonstrating on the street. The farmers agree on this, and we will take 20% of our land on agriculture out of production into forest and nature. And the farmers are not complaining. So talk with the one you disagree with. It takes time, but we can convince everyone on this common journey towards more sustainable food production. Thank you.
What a journey. Can you tell us when did you start?
Well, the think tank started in 2016 being volunteer, and I was employed in 2019.
So you say that in less than 5 years, the whole country moved.
Yes.
And so it's all about discussion. Can we convince people, or how do we get people agree with change?
To make them understand that it's not a threat against them, but a business opportunity. And if they don't seek the moment, it will be like a Kodak moment for them. They need to invest in the new transition. And I know, I'm from a farm myself, I know farmers are entrepreneuric. They want to be part of the solutions. They want to invest in them. We just need to give them the opportunity and tell them the stories that it's actually possible to invest in the new transition, and they don't have to go out of get bankrupt in the transition.
Max, it reminds me of the discussion that we had some months ago, because, as you said, you are an entrepreneur first. and it's as an entrepreneur that, as a farmer, you decided to invest much more of your time in this transition and diversification. Can you tell us more about your journey? Where do you come from first?
Actually, yeah, I can tell you a little bit about who I am.
Yeah.
I'm a European citizen, but I'm a farmer. I'm an arable farmer from Finland. I'm also working as a senior advisor for the Finnish Farmers Union on the arable crops, mainly cereals, oilseeds, but maybe today the most important one is the protein crops as well. And everything that goes into that, I mean, everything from utilizing and using of plant protection products down to fertilizers, nowadays for sure coming more and more into soil health. So everything that you would say here being the way how we farm, how it takes in consideration the environment. And today I think that people have given it even a name. It's called regenerative farming practices. I would call it normal farming practices that has been done for a long time. Now we are just in a way, like we just heard from Marie-Louise, we are moving forward. There is a change happening slowly. And I think it was very nice to hear how the main job had been to talk to thousands and thousands of farmers to get them involved from the beginning. Because this is how I got also involved in this. I got curious to see what can I do inside the boundaries of my own farm. Not the whole world like we could see here, the world boundaries, no, my own farm boundaries. What can I do there and still make sure that me as an entrepreneur will be able to continue, but also to invest and also provide the food on the table for my family, but also make sure that the next generation, I have 3 sons, that they also would see that this could be something that they would like to do in the future. I'm farming an old family farm, so there is a certain type of pressure coming in also from tradition in. It has been in the family for the last 400 and plus years. So to be able to lose it or just to say, no, I'll quit, that is not really an option. That's why I started to look into this. So I started doing things already 86 when I took over the farming business. 92 I switched already into direct seeding. And from then on I have started to develop the system that fits my farm. This is one thing that is very important to know, that fits my farm, my soils and my way of farming. Because there is not one size fits all that you can go in. I mean, for the younger generation, I can just say you cannot only do copy-paste. That's the language that the younger generation would understand. Copy-paste and it's simple, easy, we go forward from there. No, you have to find your own way and become more and more involved and get more and more interested in doing new things. And this is the journey that I took. Starting direct seeding, brought in there then slowly different types of crops, brought in there cover crops, brought in there nitrogen fixing crops. I'm a conventional farmer. I also started to work with different types of plant protection products, bringing in also their biologicals into it. I have been able to reduce the use of plant protection products significantly, but not every year. Some years you just need it, because once you are working under the big roof, you never know what's going to be thrown at you. So you need to make sure that you also have there certain type of toolbox that you can use when needed. But at the same time, you can move forward and be more sustainable. And I have taken in already long since quite a bit of protein crops, since there is, first of all, a demand, but second of all, it's a very good in the rotation. So it has been a journey. It has been a journey because I'm interested in it, but it's also have been a journey because it helps me when I talk with legislators in Finland, other farmers in Finland, but also with legislators in Brussels. Not only the legislators from the Commission side, but also with the political side. So it is much easier when you can speak about things that you have done and you also know which one has worked for you and which one has failed. You can bring in both of these sides. That's why you need to talk with farmers, and that's what I'm very glad to hear, that was the starting point. Bring us into the discussion.
Oh yes, and tell us one thing, because I can imagine from your perspective you are an arable farmer and moving to protein crops makes sense, and it can be new business, new opportunities, but what about other farmers which for many of them, and this is what you've experienced, see this transition as a threat.
Let's say they don't see it as a threat. They see it as a possibility as long as the market follows. And I think that you need trendsetters to be able to kickstart the market. And I think that has maybe been one of the struggles that me and some others in the region has had to do, is to show that this can be something that you can fit into your crop rotation from year to year, and so that also the next step can be able to invest so that they get the raw materials, etc. Not only the quantity, but also the quality needed. That's why we started in the beginning, everything went for the feed sector, like you could see here as well. It started from feed, now it's going into food. So there is a transition happening also inside the chain. This was the biggest job to be done. Then when that was in place, you saw more and more farmers starting to look into it and started to follow.
And Marie-Louise, building on that, because I understand that it's not only discussing with people, it's putting people together to also build their solution together. This is what you did, in fact.
Yes, so we did make this partnerships model also where we collaborate with the food industry. Our next project we made was a legumes partnership, so a very concrete partnership. Instead of just sustainability, we took, okay, we have legumes, it's in the dietary guidelines, we need to eat and produce more legumes in Denmark. But who should start? When farmers ask me, I want to produce legumes, which one should I produce? And I tell them, don't do it, because I don't want to see you get bankrupt, because I've seen many farmers tried quinoa or other lentils and they couldn't sell it. So what we have made is a partnership with the whole sector, from the municipalities, the biggest municipalities in Denmark, to the canteen owners, ESS, one of the world's biggest facility managers, to the Dava Food, who can make the contracts with the farmers. So we have like all the partners, and they have to, it's not just a talking partnership, they have to commit and make a goal on what they want to do to improve the production or the consumption of legumes compared to where they are in the value chain. And they have to follow on these goals, and we will follow up of them every year if they meet their target. In that way, we will establish a whole new value chain where they will demand it from the field, and they can produce it knowing that there will be someone higher in the value chain who will buy it from them.
And Francesco, building on your experience, you participate, or you were part of surveys around two major topics. One is the Sustainable Food System Framework. What kind of feedback did you hear about this? Because it was for the first time that we were thinking of projecting longer term and trying to align different strategies and regulation together. What were the feedback you got from the survey there?
Yeah, that was a very interesting exercise that we did for the European Commission back in 2022. So we're already talking about 2 years ago. And there was a lot of enthusiasm on one side from stakeholders, because I think most of them call for a framework, a legal framework for sustainable food systems. But on the other hand, there are also big fears, because you don't know exactly what this new framework and this new legislation may entail in terms of obligations. So the major concern is that, okay, most of the sectors and most of the different stages of the food chain were in favor of these transitions towards sustainability, but of course this needs to happen with specific transitional periods, first of all, and knowing more about the details, which the Commission was not very keen on sharing. And maybe, if I may say that, it's because they also didn't know what needed to go into the framework. So the main ideas was actually to have an overarching framework based on 3 building blocks: minimum requirements, sustainability requirements for food business operators. So exactly what has been happening on the food safety side, it would in principle happen also for the sustainability. The big question is whether these requirements we are talking about are mandatory or voluntary, okay? And that makes a huge difference for business operators. Second building block, sustainability labeling, everyone in favor, but what are we talking about? Because we have already measures at EU level that address the sustainability of food labeling. So I think that this was a nice opportunity probably to give and ensure that there is some coherence across different pieces of legislation. I'm thinking about animal welfare labeling. I'm thinking about front of pack nutrition labeling that also falls under the social dimension of the sustainability. And finally, 13 building block, which is very important, but not very sexy, I would say, for most of stakeholders, it's public procurement. So what schools, canteens, and also canteens of companies buy should be sustainable. Now, what products are we talking about? Again, big question marks. The Commission, I think, was inclined towards organics and plant-based, but nothing was kind of written in stone. Now, coming to our days, has anyone seen the publication of draft legislation? No, it's actually disappeared from the Commission working program. So I think that we are still asking ourselves if the new commissions will take up this challenge and this legacy and will propose this framework, or will decide to go more or to address specific sustainability issues with dossier, which is actually what happened over the past 5 years with food packaging, animal labeling, sustainable use of pesticides, with more favorable outcome and less favorable outcome, if I say so. So I think that there are still great expectations because I think that we have the opportunity to be, as we have been on the food safety side, I mean, the front runner and the leader at global level. So I think this is an opportunity that we cannot miss, but there is, I think, a lot of politics at stake. And what Marie-Louise said about Denmark, I envy, because for me it's, I mean, I come from the Southern European countries, Portugal and Italy, and I see that there is difficulties to have the stakeholders around the same table and to engage with each other, even dialogue. And so I hope that you're setting the example for the rest of Europe.
I know that we in Denmark have a really good dialogue and way of talking with each other. That is a Danish thing. But I must say, when I started the think tank in 2016, it was with the aim to tear down this wall that was between the nature organization and the Agricultural Council. They were not making political papers together as they do now. They were fighting each other in the media all the time. So it is possible. It will take 10 years, but it is possible to tear down that wall between the nature organization and the Agricultural Council, and that is needed to move forward. So I hope you will take it up in your own countries.
Because in Finland, it's the same thing. In fact, you need to put people together and to have them agree on a strategy.
Yes, that is true, but usually we go the technological way. And this is one thing that I also would like to see, that like here, lots of startups that are actually bringing the technology in as well into the discussion, bringing them in also into the protein side and all of these. And I think that is something also that will create interest. That will also start to tear down the old-fashioned walls in between. Suddenly you have new players in the room. And that usually engage people in looking, starting to discuss and see, wait a second, where does this fit in? How is this one going to change the way how we did it before? I mean, the plant protein, the animal protein.
You mean enablers, startups or solutions as enablers for you first, because you are. And to come back to this notion of why protein diversification will serve the future. How, Kiona, you've been working a lot around that. How does protein diversification serve or transfer into sustainable benefits? What does it mean, in fact? Why is it more sustainable to diversify our protein sources?
Well, I think before I'm going to give an answer on... Can you hear me? Hello, hello?
Yes.
That would have been 20 minutes of me talking to myself. Let's hopefully. So I think before I answer your question, I think one of the points I want to make to bring into this discussion is we all agree on that we need a transition. We all agree on the way we're doing it now doesn't work. And we all agree that we need to speed up that change. To make the decisions on where and how and when we make the change, we need to be able to evaluate across a level playing field. So before we get into the discussion, for me even, of alternative protein versus traditional protein, it's understanding why and where and how. To do that, we have to measure. And we have to measure on a common framework. And Francesco started to introduce that the Commission has it very unclear of exactly how we should be measuring and what is fair to be measuring and where we're trying to get to. So if we look at where we're trying to get to, and sure, the Denmark example could be a very, very good example of this is what's possible. But we really need to understand, we need to understand the baseline. We need to start with a common baseline that everyone agrees on a common baseline. That common baseline, I think we all agree on, is it doesn't work how we're doing it now. We need alternative pathways, and we need to model those pathways to inform ourselves on what is possible and in what timeline and in what context, because also Francesco started to talk about the difference of Southern Europe and Northern Europe. Apart from geography and climate, there's cultural differences where the people in Southern Europe don't necessarily just trust the government, right? They don't just accept what the government says. It doesn't work like that. I live in Spain, it doesn't work like that. And that may be right or wrong. It's not really for us to say if it's right or wrong, but it's about working with cultural context as well as geography and climate context. So also on protein diversification, what's possible in certain geographical climates is not possible everywhere. So we've got to work on a contextual landscape situation. And again, the underlying baseline there helps us to start measuring the underlying baseline, start modeling what is possible inside each of those contexts as far as sustainability goes. If we agree on the sustainability framework, right, and that is key, agreeing on what is sustainable and what's not sustainable, but then modeling them out so we can make informed decisions. And what does modeling mean? It means using the data that we are measuring in a common level playing field to make informed decisions about where, when, and how. Because it won't be exactly the same in every single situation. Do we need alternative substitutes? Absolutely. Can we keep doing the things we're doing now? No. But we need to model it out. We need to figure that out based on the data. But that starts with a common framework. And I do believe that we have the intelligence to get this common framework together. And I do believe that it is a lot of political will that's missing right now to reach that common framework. And that is because of probably a lot of cultural differences where people feel very passionate about things, right? I can assure you that in Spain also convincing the government to say you need to eat more vegetables is not as easy as it is in Denmark.
Just a question, because this common language or common calculation, this is what you've been trying to do through Foundation Earth, and it works.
That is correct. So I'm now at EIT Food. At Foundation Earth, we were working and we're bringing everything we did at Foundation Earth into EIT Food, designing a common framework that is completely neutral. This is important for credibility, right? So in this whole process that we're talking about, a transition, trust is the bottom common denominator. Without trust, there won't be any transition. So the neutrality of designing that framework is essential. It needs to be free of agendas, free of motives, free of economic benefits, free of lobby, et cetera, et cetera. And that's not easy to do in today's day and age. But building that common framework to say, how do we measure, what do we measure? And I think if you ask people, what is a negative impact compared to a positive one, most people are on the same page, right? But we need to do that in a rigorously scientific way, with science-based evidence, putting the facts and data on the table that comes from trusted sources
so that when we are making these decisions, we're making them based on the same information. This common framework we started at Foundation Earth, and now the intention is to really continue to do this at EIT Food, but also to work in collaboration with governmental bodies like the Commission to say, you have all these regulatory measures that are coming into play, and no one knows how to implement them. So there's a big gap between policy and implementation, and we need to facilitate that gap. And that's the intention that we will work on at EIT Food.
Yeah, and your scoring, which would be featured on packagings, can help people better understand how some products are better for the environment, for the sustainability, and this shall drive the transition, accelerate the transition down to the farms.
So environmental labeling is one aspect of how you can inform people. We have seen that it does have an impact, that it can be used because it can be very simple, but it's not the only one, right? We need to do this complementary to many, many other initiatives to be able to inform, educate, communicate. But it is one of the simple ones, and it does have an impact. To get it right is not easy. There's a lot of lessons learned, bad and good, and Max was speaking about this. We need to be able to present the bad, the failures as well, and learn from them. So nutrition labeling, there's a lot of lessons learned there that we need to bring in, and other types of labeling as well. Labeling alone will not save the planet, but it is a tool. So like any tool, you have to keep it sharpened, you have to keep it on point, you have to keep it fit for purpose. And we have developed a framework for that. But it needs to adapt to science. And science, part of that science is also consumer behavior, human psychology, and we need to be able to make it work, right? In a digital world, there's other tools we can use as well. Interestingly enough, on consumer research about on-pack labeling, it's amazing how much positive reinforcement there is for that. EIT Food itself, the Consumer Observatory, did an eco-labeling white paper in October this time last year. 2/3 of 10,000 people in 18 EU countries saying we like on-pack labeling because it's tangible, they can see it, they can feel it really on the product. So it is, I think it is one tool, but it needs to be in a tool set of many, many other tools.
Max, you wanted to react on?
Yes, I would just like to bring up one thing as well. I mean, we have been waiting for quite a few years for from the Commission side to see a little bit like a protein strategy for the European Union. How this whole thing would play out. I mean, a paper has been published a few times, but there has not really been any real strategy coming out through the legislators. And this already shows how difficult this really is. Do we really need a strategy? I think it would not be bad at all to have something on the table. We already started to work also on a protein balance sheet that looks at what kind of proteins are used inside the European Union, how much is being grown inside, how much is imported, etc. So I mean, but we need this kind of a push. So I think that, at least from my point of view, a protein strategy would not be bad at all to have. That would guide quite well then the other strategies as well forward.
Yes, you asked previously about why should we have protein diversification, and I just want to highlight the import of soy that we have to the European Union as feed, and the amount of feed that take up the most of the land we have on Earth, standing for over 80% of the biodiversity loss we have, directly to because of our very monoculture protein non-diversification of animal. So we need to change that. And the European Union's strategy on that for the moment is to, which they have even postponed, is to say to companies that they should make sure that the soy they import is free of rainforest deforestation.
Deforestation, yes.
For me, that is legislation greenwashing. As it worst, because that won't solve the problem. We need to change the system. We need to have protein made from tanks or from circular food systems from our waste products that we can use to our feed, or have less meat. Instead of saying that the soy that we sail in, that's suddenly sustainable. Of course it's not. It's the same amount that will be produced the one that just haven't have the stamp is going to China or US or other places of the world. So it's just a wrong path we are right now in the European Union, even though I know the Green Organization mainly are for this legislation. I'm against it.
And Francesco, I would like to ask you about this, because in the second report it was on behalf of the Parliament, and it was about projecting the needs and the solution for the future of protein needs in Europe, with how can we afford and what are the solutions that we can provide. What can you extract of the research that you did?
There would be a lot to say, so I will try to be concise as possible. So for the time, we look actually just at 4 alternative proteins: culture meat, insects, algae, and products produced obtained through microbial fermentation. So I don't know why plant-based, Marie-Louise, was left aside, but that was the project brief by the European Parliament. So for the time being, in terms of global protein markets, these alternative proteins still play a minor contribution. So we're talking about 2%, which is roughly nothing, but the projections for the medium term are more optimistic, so we should reach 11% by 2035. Now, how we are going to do that? Yes, certainly with protein diversifications, but there are a lot of hurdles, difficulties, regulatory challenges. So we tried also to suggest and give some ideas and policy options, in this case for the European Parliament, but I mean for all EU and national policy makers. So to build on what Max was saying about the need to the protein strategy, yes, but as an overarching, I would say, policy document, because what emerged from the study that we did is that a lot of stakeholders from the alternative protein sector were looking at the EU Algae initiative, that I think has already a couple of years now, as a kind of a blueprint and as a model to be replicated for other sector. And why is that? Because that document offers a very tailored view of the sector in terms of scientific, technical needs, regulatory challenges, and scalability, which is the main problem. So we suggest to consider that. And just one point to build on what Cliona was saying about the need to measure. So one of the main findings that we have from the study is that all the sustainability narrative about alternative proteins is not, always bulletproof. So there are weaknesses because of lack of data and because of the different, I would say, stages in terms of commercial and technological development. So there is the need to measure. So citing scientific literature is not enough to make a claim. So there will be the need, I would say, also for future research programs, whatever comes after the current Horizon Europe, to do something more targeted to reduce the knowledge gaps. And every food production system is different, so there are so many variables to be taken into account.
No, I totally agree with you on that, because this is also what we've seen through the protein diversification think tank inside IT Food, which is that we are talking about topics that for farmers, for food processors, for retailers and consumers are completely new. We never talked about them even 3 years ago. So we have to reinvent not only the framework, the context, and how to deploy it. Definitely. But what your report states also is that we need it.
Yes, we do.
Yeah,
yes,
but
we do.
This is the first thing that is, because for the first time an independent report commissioned by the Parliament, not the Commission itself, would confirm our say, which is that we need to go for it.
Absolutely. No, that's no doubt, and it's. Protein diversification is also essential. For the EU economy, as any business, we need to diversify to reduce the risk.
Yeah, because I really want to say one thing here, which is that on the stage here you have 4 emblems of what shall be done, because your report confirms what we need. Cliona, your studies How many partners do you have in Foundation Earth? 50 partners. You aligned them all on a common framework, and you, in the course of the past 5 years, have confirmed that it works, that they want it, they need it, they are ready to deploy it. In your case, Max, you not only yourself, but you are the voice of so many farmers that are already engaged in this transition. And your example is the one that everyone dreams about for what was done in Denmark. And I want to finish on this point, which is, why did you go up to even this carbon taxation? Where did it come from, the need of that?
The need of the carbon taxation came when we understood that the rest of the industry has a carbon taxation, even at the European level. So why shouldn't farmers have the right incentive, not just to produce the amount, the yields, but also produce it with the incentive to reduce their climate impact? So we were many actors who said, of course, it should also apply for farmers. It's unfair that everyone scream of farmers telling them to act.
We are talking about taxation as an
but they
incentive.
It's an incentive model.
It's super important to talk about it this way, in fact, because
it's an incentive model.
It's not a burden.
It is a burden, but it's
an
incentive. Yes.
It's a redistribution, and it's an opportunity that is unique for farmers to recoup the value that they create, and that to some extent was left to the other players of their value chains, isn't it?
Yes, you are right. I mean, yes, we are a very old profession, that we are, but we are not old-fashioned at all. We grasp the opportunities that are given to us. We grasp also the new technologies that are coming in. We try to work with them immediately as well. So that's what I always say. Bring the question into the farmer. They even might find a real solution to the problem.
Yeah, and this is what I want to state here also. And I'm sorry because the discussion is so passionate that we didn't have time to ask for questions. And I hope that some of you may come to some of the speakers to raise the question. But what I want to state here, and I thank you very much for being here today to confirm and to show how we are trying to, through EIT Food, through the protein diversification think tank, and through all of the actions that we are promoting here and there, we are trying to bring our piece of making it happen, our piece of success, and show emblematic stories that are working and that show that Europe can go in the right direction. We talked a little bit, or maybe a lot, about policy, but beyond policy, initiative is paramount, and we see that initiative can come first, and then policy can follow, and this is somehow where we are going, in fact. And farmers are entrepreneurs, startups are entrepreneurs. We are trying in EIT Food to be entrepreneurs in building the future of proteins, and I thank you to have shown us how it can be done. Thank you very much, and congrats for what you're doing.
I didn't take a mic, yes. I hope that you can hear me. I want to thank the panel. Maybe briefly present a few takeaways. Initiatives go first, policy follows. Maybe that's the new trend. The need to measure, to do something more targeted to reduce knowledge gaps. And also we talked about protein strategy wanted from the EU. No real strategy coming out yet. And then we need to communicate and create new models, possibly learning from Denmark to talk to the people who disagree with us most. So this is the sort of a rough summary of that session. Before we move to another highlight, another keynote of today, we will have a short break that will last around 6 minutes. So do bear with us. Do stay here. We will turn into the plenary mode, and that means you will be possibly able to get rid of the headphones for some time. So let's come back here in 5 to 6 minutes and have the final highlight of today. Thank you.